are so glad you are here tuning in on our channel, Hebrew Shebrew. I am Sarah.
I'm Mark.
And we're glad you're here. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the little alarm so you are able to get notified when we have new videos that come up. So we have been studying the Torah portion through the lens of relationships, all kinds of relationships, from husband and wife, to children, to parents, to friends, family, coworkers, to people that you are potentially looking at for potential spouse. And we are glad you are here joining us, looking through the lens of relationships by looking at God's word for that, because that should be our foundation. So let's dig in. Let's get started.
The parsha we're looking at this week is called Vayigash. It is relatively rendered, and he came near, taken from the words at the beginning of the portion, and Judah came near. It is in Bereshit, or Genesis, chapter 44, verse 18 through 47:27. Is kind of interesting parsha because it begins in the middle of a chapter, it ends in the middle of a chapter. So one of those little confusing things. It's more of a thematic beginning and ending, and it doesn't make as much sense in English. But last time we left in the middle of a cliffhanger, and now we're going to pick up. So here we go. We are going to start out in verse 16 of chapter 44, backing up just a little bit so we pick up the flow. And we're going to read 16, 17, and 18.
44, 16, 17, and 18, right?
Yes.
So Judah said, "What can we say to my Lord? What can we speak? And how can we justify ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's slaves, both we and the one in whose possession the cup has been found." But he said, "Far be it from me to do this. The man is whose possession the cup has been found, it shall be my slave. But for you, go up in peace to your father." Then Judah approached him and said, "O my Lord, may your servant please speak a word in my Lord's ear, and do not be angry with your servant, for you are equal to Pharaoh."
So this is the beginning of the conversation that Judah is going to have with Yosef. Now, he doesn't know that it is Yosef yet. That's about to become clear. But we wanted to back up to verse 16, just kind of to catch the flow, and also because we didn't have the opportunity really to talk about anything in chapter 44 in our last video. And in chapter 16, we're seeing that Joseph is again doing some testing towards his brothers. And he's got an objective here. He's trying to experience their present character. He, of course, was the victim of the character that they had all those years ago. But what he wants to see now is how are they going to treat his younger brother, the remaining son of Rachel, Benjamin. Do they despise Benjamin the same way that they despised him? Will they allow Benjamin to be taken and removed from the family picture, from having a portion or a double portion of Yaakov's inheritance, or have they changed? Now, he knows they recognize their guilt and what they did to him. If we back up to chapter 42, they admitted that Elohim has found out our crookedness. And as we look here at what Judah says in verse 16, he says that Elohim has found out the iniquity of your servants. So what Joseph is trying to find out has 20 plus years of guilt for their crime against Yosef, anguish over watching their father mourn for him. Has it brought about a change in their hearts and attitudes? Now, Yosef, he's going to get an answer. We're not going to read through this whole chapter. We are trying to keep this a little short, so we're not going to read through the whole text. But in Judah's response, he's going to be able to see that something has changed. Yehuda's love and concern for his father is evident. Let's go ahead and read in the last portion of the chapter, verse 32 through 34. "For your servant went guarantee for the boy to my father, saying, If I do not bring him back to you, then I shall be a sinner before my father forever. Now please let your servant remain instead of the boy as a slave to my master, and let the boy go up with his brothers. For how do I go up to my father if the boy is not with me? Lest I see the evil that would come upon my father." So there's a lot of things that we have taken out of this. Judah's willing to trade his life for Benjamin's life.
Yeah.
It's proof of his character and loyalty to his father and also to his brother. There's other things that we can take from this. One thing is all of us have a past.
Yeah.
Some of it's good, some of it is evil. Remember, we have talked, if you've been watching our videos, what good is and what evil is. Evil is not necessarily the things that we think of necessarily as evil, like adultery and murder and things like that. Evil is not functioning according to the purpose for which you were created. So a lot of us have good things in our past where we have functioned in our purpose, and we all have things in our past where we were not functioning according to the purpose that we were created for. So the thing that Joseph is most interested in is not who his brothers were, it's who his brothers are.
Yeah. Your past doesn't have to dictate your future. You can definitely go ahead and change your future, but have you changed? When you are presented with something that comes up from your past, are you going to react the same way, or have you changed? Is that fruit showing that you have made that turn and have changed?
I'm going to read to you really quickly from Ezekiel 18. If you want to read more on this topic, also go to Ezekiel chapter 33. But particularly Ezekiel 18, verse 20 through 32. I'm going to read 3 verses out of this discourse for you. 21 says, "But the wrong, if he turns from all his sins which he has done, and he shall guard all my laws, and shall do justice and righteousness, he shall certainly live, he shall not die. And when the wrong turns away from the wrong which he has done," this is verse 27, "and he does justice and righteousness, he keeps himself alive, because he sees and turns away from all the transgressions which he has done. He shall certainly live and shall not die." Now, I didn't read the parts to you in there, but it's also the same for the one who is righteous. If he turns away from his righteousness and begins to do wrong, then he shall certainly die. We see both sides of that. But with Judah in this story, and Judah as the representative of the brothers, of course, they were on the side of the wrong. They did what was wrong. And Joseph recognized that. But now he is recognizing that Judah is doing what is right. He is doing justice. He's doing righteousness. And he's much more concerned, just like our God is much more concerned about who you are rather than who you were.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's a matter of what does your fruit show now? Yes, you've been forgiven. Yes, you've turned from your wicked ways or from, the evilness. What are you able to go ahead and do now? Yeah. Are you working in your purpose now?
And then, just looking towards your relationships with both a current spouse or a potential spouse. If you decide that you want to pass on people because they have a past, well, you've got a past too.
Yes.
We've all got a past, but, we've heard of many couples that we've helped get together or that we just know of that, their past was terrible, but that past is not who they are. And they have a beautiful and wonderful relationship now because of who they are, and they're willing to look past that and investigate and experience the person for who they are now.
Yes. Exactly. So it's like, don't look at what that person was before. Again, look at their fruit. Have they changed? Do they still trip up or do they not? And if they do, are they willing to go ahead and get help? If you're currently married, you should want to go ahead and help your spouse. So it's a matter of figuring out, okay, does that person want help or do they not want help? And what can you go ahead and do within that? Prayer is going to be your biggest cheerleader. Your biggest thing to go ahead and do, is to go ahead and pray for each other. Pray for your spouse. Maybe they're not walking with God, and prayer is going to be your biggest thing. And how does your walk, is your walk good or is your walk evil too? So it's a matter of just what's your walk look like.
Also in 32 and through 34, we've already read this, but it's the idea of being an intercessor, which we see Judah being here. We also see later in the Brit Hadashah and I believe the Gospel of Yochanan of John, where Yeshua says, "There's no greater love than this, than to lay down your life for your brother." Yeah. Okay, well, this is clearly an example of that. Yeah. Judah acts as an intercessor for Benjamin before the Egyptian governor, before Joseph. He offers himself in Benjamin's place Okay, well, how does this relate to our relationships? Can you see yourself willing and able to do this for another person, especially for your spouse, for your children, for your parents, for your father, for someone in your community? The thing is, every relationship will at some point require us to lay down our life in some way. If not physically, then spiritually, emotionally, etc. Our wants, our desires will have to be put aside to meet the needs of the other.
Yeah.
So can we do this? And even more important than can we do it, will we do it?
Yeah.
The decision, now this is critical, the decision has to be made before the crisis appears. Judah had already prepared to give himself up before allowing harm to come to Benjamin. Relationship requires sacrifice.
Yeah, it does. It really does. You know, it is laying down yourself, you know, to serve the other person. And if you're always within that, then the other person is hopefully going to go ahead and do that too. You know, it goes both ways. It's not just a one-way street. You know, you guys know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you're getting to know somebody, you know, try and make this topic, you know, one of interest. You know, have you ever had to lay aside your desires to have a better relationship? You know, have those kind of conversations. All these things we're talking to you about is just starting points for conversations that you can have with a potential spouse, or if you've never had it with your spouse that you have already, you need to go ahead and have these things.
Yeah.
It's going to make your relationship flow a lot better.
Yeah. And if you're able to practice these things with your friends, with your community,
Yeah.
it's even better. Then you're able to realize and be like, okay, I could go ahead and do this in a relationship. You know, how often do you serve in your community? How often do you go ahead and stay a little extra later and help clean up? You know, a lot of places are needing people to go ahead and step up and clean and help, you know, with whatever. Maybe it's just greeting at the door, you know, but it's a matter of how are you serving your local community? What can you go ahead and do and show that example so when you are married, you're able to do that with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Chapter 45, we're going to read verse 1 and 2.
Yep. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried, "Have everyone go out from me." So there was no man with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard of it.
So Joseph is able to control his emotions to a point. Mm-hmm. He knew he was reaching a breaking point, and he made the decision to send everyone out before he had an emotional outburst. Yeah. Although the Egyptians heard it, they didn't witness it, they didn't see it. Mm-hmm. So this is just one thing that we want to see. Are you able to keep your emotions in check? Do you have emotional outbursts in front of people that should not witness it? Yeah. In front of children? Or in front of employers, employees? Do you do it in public places? Or are you able to vent properly? Now, you know, we're definitely not advocating that you bottle it up inside. You need to be able to vent properly in secluded places in front of trusted people. This is a great topic of discussion, you know, for, you know, with the potential spouse. Like, how do you handle your emotions?
Yeah. What are you able to go ahead and control? You know, it's okay to go ahead and have emotional cries or get frustrated or get mad or get upset, but how do you control that? You know, you're not going to want to put your fist into a wall. That's not controlling your emotion. But maybe you need to go to your bedroom, close the door, take a pillow, and scream into it. You know, that's okay to go ahead and do. You have to learn to be able to control some of that emotion and figure out, be like, okay, why am I getting so upset? What is it? You know, and a lot of times what happens is when that emotional happens and you have that breaking point, it's because a boundary or an expectation did not get met. And if that's the case, okay, was it you not expressing your boundary or your expectation? Or is it the other person who is crossing over into that boundary or expectation? You know, and then you're getting frustrated within that. And especially around, you know, being around family that you might not be around all the time, or, you know, it could be anything that just triggers you, but it's a matter of how do you control that trigger? What do you go ahead and do with that anger and that emotion?
Yeah, can you properly communicate? That's really what a lot of our problems come from, is the inability to communicate effectively. And we're probably going to do a video on this at some point, but you know, the ability to communicate effectively will handle most of the problems that we encounter.
Yes.
But we don't do it. We procrastinate. We have the fear of being rejected for communicating the things that we need to communicate, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But if we could learn to communicate effectively, it would handle and cure a lot of our problems.
Yes, it definitely would.
Yeah.
It definitely would. Yep.
Verse 5 through 8 in chapter 45. And now do not be grieved nor displeased with yourselves because you sold me here. For Elohim sent me before you to preserve life. For 2 years now the scarcity of food has been in the land, and now there are still 5 years in which there is neither plowing nor harvesting. Elohim sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant in the earth, to give life to you by a great escape. So then, you did not send me here, but Elohim. And he has set me for a father to Pharaoh, and he has set me as master of all his house and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good in regards to that, because it's like sometimes God prepares us for what is going to happen. You know, what is our calling later down the road? You know, what is it that we are supposed to go ahead and do? And I've seen that in my own life, you know, where I thought certain traumatic things that happened was like, okay, God, why are you doing this? Well, now I see the purpose for it years later, you know, and what I'm able to go ahead and do and function in my purpose to be able to help other people and to be able to talk to other people in regards to, you know, being divorced, in regards to finding a spouse who honestly, truly loves God, you know, and wants to serve him and just doesn't have head knowledge of him, but actually has the word, you know, in their heart as well, and in their actions of what they do. And so God calls you sometimes to certain things that you're wondering, why, God? Why is this happening to me? Well, there's a purpose for it, you know, and it's a matter of, are you walking in that purpose, or are you being stubborn and not walking in that purpose?
Mm. Walking your purpose. We keep coming back and back to that point, but that's because it's one of the great themes of Scripture.
Yes.
So, you know, expect us to continue getting on that, because, you know, that's what Elohim continues to talk about. It's not us. He keeps bringing it up.
Yep.
In chapter 46, verse 1 through 5, could you read that one?
46?
46, 1 through 5.
1 through 5. So Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. And he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again. And Joseph will close your eyes. Where am I going, to 6?
To 5.
To 5. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob and their little ones and their wives in the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. That's good.
So, before Israel left Canaan for Egypt, he stopped at Beersheba to sacrifice to Elohim. So, many times, as we read in Bereshith, we've seen that these sacrifices were a way to call on the name of Yah, or to initiate a conversation with Elohim. And this is what happens here. Elohim speaks to Israel in a vision of the night. He calls his name, and Israel answers, Hineni, the Hebrew, here I am. Which, I don't know if I've spoken to you guys about this, but briefly, the Hineni is basically saying, I am your servant, I stand ready to do your will. So Yaakov answers him, Hineni, here I am, I'm ready to do whatever you tell me to do. And Yah assures Yaakov that going to Egypt, it's the right path, that he will go with them to Egypt, he will bring them back from Egypt, and that he's going to see Joseph. But what's our lesson here? What's our takeaway? Obviously, the relationship between ourselves and Elohim. Okay, we are all part of a covenant, the covenant that he made with Israel. So we are covenant partners, just like Elohim and Yaakov were covenant partners. But also we have other covenant partners. Our covenant partner is our spouse. Sarah and myself are covenant partners. We have other covenants out there that we have in business relationships and friendships and things of that nature. So before taking a huge step that's going to have a great impact on his household, Yaakov pauses to ask and consult Yah about this decision. So the big question is, are you going to, or do you consult your covenant partner about big decisions? Will you consult your potential spouse about big decisions in your marriage? Or are you going to make decisions that impact others without even discussing it with them first?
Yeah. Do you have that conversation, of like, hey, let's put our house on the market, let's move, let's buy a car, let's have a child. Those are big discussion conversations to go ahead and have. We're not talking about, well, can I buy eggs or can I not buy eggs? Or you need to figure out what are those big discussions that you need to go ahead and have before making that discussion. I remember my parents talking about where they had like $100 or $150 limit that my mom could go ahead and spend without asking my dad to be like, hey, can I go ahead and buy this? Because it's like, can I go ahead and go buy a couch for $300? No, that's a big decision, or can I go buy a TV, for $1,000? Well, that's a big decision. Versus I need shoes, I need a coat. Those are things that you could go ahead and go do without having to have those discussions. But it's a matter of sitting down and having that discussion, and having that conversation so you don't get into arguments. Again, it's communication.
Yeah.
It is completely communication. If we look at this, it's communication. And it starts with God. It starts with asking him and be like, hey, what am I supposed to go ahead and do? Am I supposed to go left? Am I supposed to go right? Am I supposed to move? Am I not supposed to move? Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to go ahead and do? And it starts with our relationship with God and having a conversation with him.
And that leads us very well into the last topic we're going to get into here today. It's in chapter 47, and we really need to read the whole chapter to get a grasp on it. But it's about Joseph's management and planning skills with his family, with Pharaoh, with the Egyptians, with his father. There's all kinds of things that are going on here in this chapter about Joseph and the way that he planned things, the way that he managed things.
Yeah.
With his family, he instructed his brothers in what to say. Settling them in Goshen outside of mainstream Egypt. He gave them counsel in how to say things to Pharaoh. And as they took his counsel, things progressed according to his plan. So that they did well in receiving and acting upon his counsel. With the Egyptians, he saved them from death. He did transform them basically from free men into sharecroppers, but they lived and they did not die, which is what they would have done without Joseph to help them. Kind of the big picture is that Joseph managed the circumstances that were before him into the best possible outcome for his family and for his master, Pharaoh.
Yeah.
So kind of what we get from this and just talk about it is, what is your life preparation style, I suppose you would say? How do you manage your life? Do you plan, or do you fly by the seat of your pants? Are you more spontaneous? It's different styles of life management.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to say that one way is better than the other, but you need to be able to recognize that in each other and make sure that you're compatible. Now, if you're already married and you've got one that's a planner and one that is spontaneous, well, you got to figure out a way to kind of grease that to make sure that things are working together. You have to be able to bend, a little bit. Both of you have to be able to bend. So that's probably the best way is make sure that you are compatible and can actually move with each other instead of like just tearing apart at each other.
Yeah. How do you plan? What is it that you go ahead and plan? I mean, for us, we plan weekly meals. We have weekly meals in regards to what it is we have. We have some favorite meals. And so we go ahead and have some of those on a rotation basis. And that's one way to help us in the evening to be able to know what's for dinner and to be able to go ahead and help plan. We also plan for the different feasts. We know when we're going to go ahead and celebrate Passover, when we're going to go ahead and celebrate Sukkot, where we're going to go ahead and celebrate it. And we go ahead and start saving now for it. So we are able to go ahead and enjoy that time at the feast. We have plenty of time now, almost an entire year, to go ahead and plan for Sukkot, to be able to go ahead and put money off to the side every single month to be able to either rent an RV, fly where we need to go, drive, or be in a tent. You know, it's a matter of planning those things and being able to have fun during that time frame. You know, and if you want to come join us, we would love for you to come join us. We go to Lion and Lamb in Oklahoma, and we have a fun time with the singles there, you know, and it's a great time. And so that's where we end up going every single year since we've been married, you know, and it's a good time, but it's a matter of how do you plan for the future. You know, we've talked about that before. We've talked about, do you have a will? You know, who's going to take care of your animals when you go on vacation? You have to plan those things. You know, what are you going to go ahead and do for whatever? You know, it's a matter of how do you go ahead and plan for that activity, for that time frame, whatever. And if you like to be spontaneous, it's okay to go ahead and do that too. It's okay to be like, hey, I don't want to eat that tonight. Let's go out. You know, it's okay to go ahead and do that. We've done that many of times, you know, but it's a matter of just planning the spontaneity or just going along with the flow as well, but also planning for certain future things too, because you never know if something's going to come up, you know, that you need to go ahead and be prepared for. You know, we recently found out some work that needs to get done on one of our cars. So it's like, okay, we need to go ahead and plan financially that, you know, we need to put money off to the side to go ahead and take care of this, you know, that needs to go ahead and happen. So again, it's a matter of just planning and how do you manage your life and what do you need to do to prepare for the future?
So, you know, as we've looked into Parsha Vayigash, we've investigated the relationships between Yosef and his family, Yosef and Pharaoh, Yosef and the Egyptians, between Yah and his covenant people. We uncovered many topics of interest, but we really didn't get everything that's in there. I'm sure that as you read through it, you're going to find many other things that are relationship oriented. And the things that we talked about today, we may go into a little bit more in depth in a future video or something like that. This is what we chose to do today. But just the things that we talked about, you know, who's involved in your big decisions that impact your family? Yeah. What's your life management style? Are you a planner or more spontaneous? Are you willing to seek out and act upon counsel from others who possess information about the decisions you need to make? Do you believe that Yah has a plan and purpose for your life and for your relationships? Are you willing to make sacrifices for his plans and purposes? Have you properly dealt with your past? How do you handle and control your emotions? Who are you now? Yeah. And are you living in your past or are you moving towards your future? Remember, Yah is concerned with now. Yeah. If you've dealt with the things, what does he say? I've forgotten them. Yeah. You may still be living in it, but he forgot them. He wants to move on into your future and your purpose. He's not as concerned about what you did in the last 20, 30, 40 years of your life as what are you now? What are you doing now? Yeah, exactly. He loves you. You know, he does. He loves you and he wants the best for you. You know, and that's why we go through this. That's why we're studying the Torah portion, is to be able to see Yeshua, you know, all throughout Scripture. You know, he's been from the beginning of Genesis 1 all the way up until where we're at right now. And he's just all throughout it. And so we hope you guys have enjoyed these videos. Please like and subscribe. You can find us on Facebook and on Instagram. And of course, we also have our website too, HebrewShebrew.com. And we just hope you guys enjoy these videos. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Bye. Shavua Tov. Have a great week, y'all.